Hello and welcome to episode 185 of Magic Rays of Light, a podcast exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more. I'm your host Sigmund Judge. I'm joined once again by my co-host, Mr. Devon Dundee. And, well, it's been 1 week removed now since our initial reactions to what was unveiled by Apple. Now devices are in people's hands, on people's wrists, and in people's ears. Before your thoughts on iPhone Air, Devon, I wanted to talk about, I think, the most accessible product, and I think probably the best product that Apple have launched, maybe in the last decade, and that is AirPods and the latest iteration, AirPods Pro 3. Was AirPods Pro 3 something you picked up, or have you had the opportunity to try them at least?
I did pick them up. I haven't spent a ton of time with them yet. I know you've gotten more time with them, so I'm actually interested to hear your thoughts before I really put them to the test. But you've had them for, 3 or 4 days now as we're recording?
Oh, yeah.
And put them through their paces. What do you think about AirPods Pro 3 so far?
I mean, firstly, the shape of them is slightly different. I like it. I can't really explain it because when you look at the tech specs, it says that they're heavier than the previous generation. But to me, maybe it's because they're not as top heavy. They feel lighter and they feel more secure in my ears. Now, I've never had a problem with AirPods Pro being and feeling secure in my ears, right? We're coming from the person that has the original AirPods and had to hold them in his ears as he ran for a bus, right? I don't have that problem with AirPods Pro, never have, hopefully never will. And because of that secure fit, one thing I would say is the buds that come with the AirPods Pro 3, as we talked about last week, they are slightly different. They have like a foam infusion in the tips. As someone that has used professional in-ear pieces before from the likes of Shure back in the day, the idea with their tips was that you squeezed the foam and then kind of maneuvered them into your ear, like almost like twisting it into your ear, and then they would decompress and you'd get that seal, but they get quite mucky very, very quickly, those types of tips. These are really, really clean. They're a mix between the two, and the seal that they create is phenomenal, to the point that I would say the noise cancellation on these is so good. It's almost, and I'd say it might even be on par, because I haven't worn these since I got AirPods Pro 3, but I think they're on par with the AirPods Max, and they're a downside more comfortable, right, and not as heavy. So even if there is that slight difference, I think the AirPods Pro 3 are going to be what I go with from now on, and I may even pick up a second pair so that I can switch in between, which is crazy considering you get 8 hours on a pair, but I wear my AirPods like all day, every day, pretty much. I don't know what kind of sorcery is involved here, but in fact, it's just a group of incredibly talented hardware and software engineers, right, at the audio team, perfecting, as I said, Apple's best product released over the last decade. Now, I haven't used these for workout tracking because I'm an Apple Watch wearer, but one thing that I really love is this new detection, sleep detection, right? So whatever you've got these AirPods Pro connected to, and I think this works with most AirPods. I'm not sure if it is using the heart rate sensor within AirPods Pro 3. That's something that maybe we can find out at a later date. But it basically pauses whatever you're watching, so you're not missing vital minutes or even hours of films and TV shows that you're following when you do fall asleep mid-watch. And this is actually genius. I actually also noticed it. I was watching late night WWE with a friend over FaceTime this weekend, and I was really struggling to get through it, and I kept nodding off, and straight away I heard the disconnect sound on my AirPods Pro, and it woke me back up. in my ear, right? So that's kind of funny and kind of cool. The one thing I kind of wish is that we were able to build some kind of automation around this detection to then turn off the Apple TV and maybe the lights within a room so that, hey, if you're asleep, you're asleep, okay? And maybe we can find a way of getting rid of that noise when you do disconnect in mid-flow. So in terms of audio quality, very important here. I actually A/B tested between the AirPods Pro 2 and the AirPods Pro 3 this past weekend. It feels like this pair is better tuned for spoken words. I'd say also for movies and TV shows this time around. Whereas I'd say for music, I think I may prefer the previous model. And that's really all to do with the bass and the low end. When it comes to music specifically, it definitely feels less impactful when it comes to music. Whereas the lower frequency energy in stereo up mixes for TV and movies was far more impactful, and there's definitely, I think, a better separation between vocals, Foley sounds, and the score in my testing for watching movies and TV shows. Only Murders in the Building, I was suddenly hearing sounds that I don't think I'd heard before. You know, and some people will be skeptical listening to this, thinking it's confirmation bias of some kind, but I promise you, I A/B tested between both pairs, and there is a distinct difference. I'm not sure if it's the ANC creating that, and because you've got that better seal, you're hearing sounds differently, but yeah, there's definitely some processing going on here, and whatever I'm listening to just sounds so much better, and I feel far more connection with the shows. And I know it's gonna sound ridiculous, but there is a massive difference here between the Pro 2s and the Pro 3s. The thing that is coming to a lot of AirPods, which I hadn't tested in beta, I don't think it was available in beta. It was only available with the public release of iOS 26. But live translation. This is, and again, this is no hyperbole. This is truly transformational. I hate to admit this, but I'm the person whose brain isn't attuned to learning languages. I find it incredibly difficult. And I'm definitely someone that has to learn as I'm speaking, right, or I'm hearing words, right, and so I'll pick up a word at a time, and the problem I've always had is as soon as you start speaking English anywhere internationally, that person wants to almost practice their English on you, unless you're in Paris, where they don't, and I respect them for that. But that's the reality. What's really cool about this, I remember when it came to live translation, Google really first explored this concept during its, I think it was in 2016, their original Pixel phone unveil, where they had the Pixel Buds, and they were doing live translation, except in practice it didn't really work, which saved me some heartache because I wanted this feature so badly that there was a moment where I was willing to switch, which is crazy. 9 years later, Apple have brought this, and of course we only saw the pre-recorded demo, and I think this week, and the Meta presentation this past week, shows why live demos aren't necessarily the greatest thing, provided you're confident that you can actually, bring it in real life. Apple have delivered on this concept. I was having conversations in German and picking up words, and whilst my brain has never, again, been wired to pick up languages, in 1 hour I was already remembering words. And what I would say is this is a real tool for learning. It's not a cheat code. Some would assume it to be, but I genuinely see this being a tool in which I'm going to be able to learn German or Spanish or Portuguese, the three languages that are often most frequent in my life beyond English. So, yeah, I mean, AirPods Pro 3, I personally, I'm not saying put the price up. by any means, but I do think even at $249, which is the price point that was the last generation, they've completely over delivered on this. And yeah, I'm absolutely blown away. Now, I can't really give any long-term hands-on with iPhones. Remember I was saying to you I'd ordered an iPhone 17 Pro Max. It wasn't coming until October 10th.
Right.
Well, on the Friday, I got a notification to say it's being delivered the following day. And so, whilst I hadn't rushed to my local Apple store to check out the new models, on that day, once I received my delivery, I decided, you know what, I'm going to go to the store and have a look at everything and see what I think, because that's really the only way that I'm going to have a real understanding of what's being delivered by Apple this year. I'll just say my initial thoughts haven't really changed when I saw the iPhone Pro phones and the iPhone 17s. The iPhone Air was really impressive, right? Really thin, beautiful, and it felt premium, unlike the new finish on the iPhone Pro phones, which I'm still not enamored by. And so my iPhone 17 Pro Max is still in its box right now. And I'd been going to and fro with you privately via messages about whether or not I was going to upgrade this year. And then I came across a video yesterday on YouTube, just randomly, from a Chinese YouTuber called Lynx TV. And it's a fantastically shot video. We'll leave a link in the show notes. But not just fantastically shot, very emotional, very informative. And he was kind of going through the history of photography, and then he was comparing video and ProRes video to the information within a negative for a photo, right? And what you're able to do in post-process when it comes to the remasters of some of our favorite films, because that information is still there and can be used at a later date. And it sounds ridiculous, because how many times am I really going to hook up a hard drive to shoot ProRes on my iPhone? But it really sold me on it. I started to forget about the fact that it's not necessarily the form factor I want it to be in. It's not the finish. The color isn't the color I wanted. And I started to remember how incredibly fortunate we are to live in this age of technology where we do have all of these choices, and being able to create at such a high quality level is now available to a lot more people. These phones aren't by any means something that you don't think of when spending the money, right? It's a lot of money on a phone each year. But reconnecting with the marvel of this technology and really kind of going back to the basic essence of what Apple have delivered here convinced me to go with my iPhone 17 Pro Max, although it's still in its box right now. So I'm still not enamored by the colors. I wish I could go with iPhone Air, but there are limitations there. It's such a beautiful phone. You've been living with the phone and its limitations, although I don't know whether or not you've experienced any kind of moments where you were hoping for something to be there that just isn't on the phone. So tell me about your first thoughts on the iPhone Air. I guess you're going to want to pair it with a pair of AirPods.
Yes, for reasons that we'll talk about soon, you're definitely going to want headphones for the most part when you're using iPhone Air. But I will say the thing that has surprised me most so far about my experience with the iPhone Air, having it over the weekend and trying it out for the past 4 or so days, is how non-compromised actually the experience is compared to what I was expecting. I went in, I was pretty hesitant, honestly, about pulling the trigger on the iPhone Air because I've been on the Pros and Pro Maxes for so long. I'm used to the most everything out of an iPhone, and this iPhone is not the most everything, right? It's making a bunch of trade-offs is probably the right word, for the sake of the form factor. And I have to say, so far, I actually think that I made the right call making those trade-offs for the form factor, because the thing is just incredible. I mean, you pick it up and it doesn't feel like it should be real. It feels too small to be able to do anything, much less all the things that an iPhone is capable of. And I felt so giddy picking it up for the first time, and I still get that feeling when I pick it up, because it's just such a special thing to hold, what Apple's done here. And it gives me vibes of back in the day when I used to carry around an iPod Touch everywhere I went, back before I had an iPhone. And I love that form factor so much. I always said I wish they would make a cellular iPod Touch. And, that's almost what this is in terms of the thinness, but then you also get all the benefits of the nicest screen and the good camera. And so it really is like the culmination of something I've been hoping for such a long time. And it just feels so good in the hand. Like, I've just been doing so much more on my phone because I just want to use it more, which is an interesting experience to have. But it just, Apple moved away from the thin and light for so long, and for good reason. I think you can go too far on certain things, but to have it as a part of the lineup where people who value that can make those trade-offs and choose that, I think it's very cool. And it seems like, at least so far, I'm one of those people who's willing to make those trade-offs, Sigmund. Yeah, the first few days with iPhone Air, I've just been taking in that form factor and kind of running it through its paces in everyday life, trying to make sure that I'm not committing myself to a year plus of something that's not going to work for me. And so far, it seems to be working. We went out on Saturday to a pumpkin patch with my family. That's a great testing place for me in terms of what a phone can do, because I'm taking pictures, I'm looking at, times and directions and all this different stuff. It's a great way to really put a phone through the test. And using the camera out there, I will say I missed the 5X a couple of times. There were a couple times when I felt like I had to step closer to whatever my son was doing than I normally would want to. But I'll also say that it was actually kind of nice in the moment not to have to make that decision either. Because it's just a single lens. You got 1X, 2X. You're not fiddling with anything. You're not wondering, okay, but in this lighting, is the 5X really going to be able to hold up? Or would it be better off doing the 1X and then cropping? All that kind of stuff. It's one camera. You've got the 1X, 2X option, but really that's, again, just cropping in and, cutting those megapixels a bit. And so at the end of the day, using the camera control, we talked about how sometimes that can be a struggle for people. It was just a switch between 1 and 2 for me. 1, 2, take a picture. And I actually really love that streamlined experience. And so there was a couple moments where I did feel like, oh, you know what, being a little further away might have been beneficial here, but I didn't feel like I missed any shots that I would have gotten otherwise. And so the camera, the images themselves were incredible, as you'd expect off the main camera on a current iPhone. And I loved the way they looked, and I didn't feel like not having that telephoto was really hampering me while I was out there.
Do you think the simplified experience is going to push you to take even more photos? I know you take lots and lots of photos, so maybe this is the wrong person to be asking. But I think maybe for those that they got used to having a camera in their pocket the whole time, but because they got used to it and it's just there, it's maybe something that's taken a back step and not been a focus of them. And, I know that even though with the most fantastic cameras in my pocket, I'm not the best person to document my life and my moments, because I'm so in those moments. And that's something I'm trying to get better at. Does this simplify it? The kind of moving away from that barrier of suddenly you're a content creator and not just a family man trying to take photos of his family and friends?
I think it does get a little bit back to that point and shoot concept that really popularized photography for just everyday people out in their lives, where you just pull out the camera, snap it, and go back. You don't worry so much about every little detail. And of course, there's moments that you want to capture a certain way and you take that extra time, but just for your kids doing something cute and you just want to make sure you capture it, I think that's definitely, that simplified experience could definitely be a benefit, and it has been for me so far already. I think there will be times over the coming year where I still will miss the telephoto when I'm at an event and I'm far away from the subject. You're at school recitals or whatever, that kind of thing, that's still going to be a struggle. But in terms of just day-to-day going and doing stuff, I found the camera to be not only capable, but actually really, really ideal for what I was doing. Battery life was another big concern, and thus far, I don't think it's actually going to be as big of a deal as I thought it would be. The day out at the pumpkin patch, I will say I got home and I was like, I'm going to go ahead and order a battery pack just for days where I'm away from chargers and not having an opportunity to charge, because we've got some travel coming up and I just don't want it to be a concern.
Mm-hmm.
So I did decide after being out with it for a day that I want to have that backup plan, which is something I've never done before. I've never traveled with batteries or anything like that before. So that's going to be another consideration on days where I'm out all day. But when I'm at work, when I'm hanging out at home, that kind of thing, it's perfectly capable for what I'm doing. And I am someone who pushes my phone battery pretty far because I am constantly pulling it out and snapping photos. And, you know, I'll be honest, I'm on my phone more than I should be anyway. And I like the screen bright. So there's all these factors. But I'll say that from my experience and from what a lot I'm hearing so far from people who are spending time with the iPhone Air, the battery's not as much a concern as we thought it could be. Now, it's not iPhone Pro level. You know, you're not going to be out there all day snapping pictures, taking videos, and come home and still have 80% battery. But I think it is going to be enough to get me through the day, which is good to know.
Very cool. Very cool.
Now, you mentioned the audio coming out of the phone itself. That is a big change that I didn't really consider before I bought the iPhone Air. It only includes one speaker. So it's got the speaker up at the top that you put up to your ear to talk on a phone. And it can also play audio, you know, pretty loudly. It'll play podcasts and videos and music and things like that. And I'll say that when I'm just like scrolling and watching reels or whatever I'm doing, just wasting time online, that's totally fine. But if I'm trying to watch something widescreen and pay more attention to it and, you know, hear the sound mix and things like that, that single speaker does get a little bit weaker in that area, because you're not even getting stereo sound. It's literally just one speaker, all the sounds coming out of one side, which is a little uneven. And yeah, I would say for like serious watching of TV shows and films, if you do that on your phone, you know, it's not something I tend to do anyway, but you're going to want headphones if you're watching anything like that on your iPhone Air. Now, the screen's amazing. The screen, you know, it's ProMotion. I mean, it's the pro level screen now coming down. So in terms of the visuals, it's incredible. But the audio, I will say that is a pretty big trade-off. And you're going to want headphones for watching anything, you know, beyond just social media videos. I will say, as I'm getting ready in the mornings, I do listen to podcasts and different things, and the volume has been fine. I just tend to, when I'm getting ready, I just crank it all the way to the max, because I assume I'm going to need as much as I can get, and it's been fine. It hasn't been an issue in terms of hearing what I'm listening to. So yeah, the single speaker, I'd say that's probably the most mixed bag so far. But I'm like you, I mostly live with my AirPods in my ears anyway, so you know, you always have that out, and the screen is going to work incredibly for you. So that's kind of my first impressions of the iPhone Air. I'll say, like I said, day to day, it's working really well for me, and I love the form factor, and so I'm enjoying it overall. And the things that I thought were going to be big concerns, like battery and camera, haven't been so much yet. And yeah, I'm loving it. If you are thinking about picking up the iPhone Air, I'd highly recommend you go check it out in person, try the form factor, and I will warn you, it's just such an impressive demo that you're probably going to walk out with one. But I do think it's going to be a great phone for a lot of people. I think it's going to be a great phone for me.
Yeah, that's really cool. As I say, when I got to check this out in store, I was very much like, maybe I should go with the iPhone Air this year. Even me. And then I made a, for and against list. I did that. I love a list. And yeah, it wasn't for me, but yeah, fantastic. I'm glad that it's there. And I think the biggest point that you made about that simplicity when it comes to the camera, 100% agree with you. Just bring it back to basics and just enjoy the moments, not having to think so much about, I don't know, art, so to speak. Leave that to the pros.
And I mean, Apple's elevated the basis of what the iPhone provides in terms of photo and video anyway. You're getting HDR, photographic styles, all of that. You're also getting in the camera, you're getting action mode for free anyway. You don't get cinematic mode, But in terms of the stabilization, you're still getting that as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that you get there included that Apple's just raised the baseline. And I think the baseline for a lot of people is going to be enough.
Yeah, I mean, the front-facing camera, that's what I'm looking forward to trying out the most.
Oh, yeah.
When I unbox my phone. Anyway, yeah, a really, really cool way to kick off this week's episode. Of course, there's lots more to come on the show this week, including London Rules with the return of Slow Horses, a recap, and a final adios to Acapulco. But we begin this week by immersing ourselves in speed with MotoGP. MotoGP Tour de Force was released earlier this week in Apple Immersive Video. The much-awaited documentary from CANAL Plus follows championship rider Johann Zarco through his dramatic victory in the rain during the French Grand Prix at Le Mans in May, ending the 71-year wait for a home victory in front of more than 300,000 fans.
We're in Le Mans, this is the French Grand Prix, the biggest party on two wheels.
I want to win races and I always push myself to find the performance, to do better and have the possibility to win. I always keep the hoping lights of victory always there because I'm racing to have this. When it began to rain before the race, I knew things can happen.
Now, we've both had the opportunity to check this immersive documentary out, 30 minutes in length, available now to everyone, either via the TV app or in France via Canal Plus directly. The technical aspects of this, firstly, of course, used by the Ursa Cinema immersive camera from Blackmagic, in which they actually used 4 of these attached to pedestals and steady cams. And this was not just captured in immersive video, but also in immersive audio with ambisonic microphones. And of course, a lot of other kit, including to review and monitor footage, Mac Studio, Pro Display XDR, and Apple Vision Pro, all on site. Edited, color graded, and mixed by the post-production team with DaVinci Resolve Studio using the same setup in Paris. This is something we've been waiting for a long, long time, and follows hot on the heels of F1 the movie and the F1 Hot Lap extra that came. We mentioned MotoGP, of course, we mentioned speed, but this is a very different experience to what we were maybe expecting.
Yeah, it's less action-oriented. It's more about the story, though there is lots of footage of the racing, which is quite thrilling. I'm not familiar at all with MotoGP. It's another one of those sports that I'm just ignorant of, and it's actually described in the documentary as the F1 of motorbike, which is a kind of a cool way of describing it, I think. And the thing that I noticed as I was watching it was that all the action was filmed trackside, rather than first person. There was no footage from the bike itself, which maybe would have been impractical with one of those big cameras on the bike, as opposed to getting them on an F1 car, probably a lot more space to work with there. But regardless, even though it was all from the side of the track, it was still thrilling, because as I was standing there watching these bikes go by, I almost couldn't turn my head quickly enough to track them as they were racing past. Like, that's how quickly they were going. I think at one point Zarco mentions that this is a slower track because they're only going 300 kilometers per hour. And I was like, wait, that's a slow track? On these bikes, of course, you don't have the protection. You've got your suit on, but if something happens, and we see a couple of things do happen throughout the documentary, I mean, your body's just kind of out there on the line. So it is very thrilling, maybe in a different way from what we've seen from F1, but I do think it had some of those action elements as well, though they were shot more from a third-person perspective than first-person. In terms of quality and viewing experience, I'd say this felt very in line with Apple's own immersive films and shows. It's that 180-degree field of view that we've come to expect, 8K resolution in 3D with spatial audio. I think it looked and sounded excellent. You could tell that the people who put this together were putting a lot of effort into it, that they cared deeply about this story and about telling it well. And so that was kind of a question that I had going into this world where more people have access to the immersive cameras, was what was the quality going to be like, and how exactly was it going to compare to Apple's first party? Because we still don't know exactly what cameras Apple's been using for their immersive videos so far. And so to me, this bodes well for Apple immersive video from third-party creators, that the Ursa Sena is able to put out content that I would say is on par with what we've seen so far from Apple and looks very good. In terms of story, I think the story was great, of course, with the documentary. Going through a weekend of a sporting event, you never know exactly what you're going to get. I think they had hopes for how they wanted the story to turn out. And, I think I've said this before with some of these docuseries, that if the story had gone differently, maybe this would have never seen the light of day. But it was a great story of triumph. There were plenty of setbacks and trepidation along the way. There was a roller coaster element to it, but at the end of the day, I think it was very much a story of triumph. So it follows Zarco and his teams. They prepare for the huge Grand Prix with a lot on the line, because it hasn't been won by a French racer in 71 years. And then to add more of that personal touch, also Zarco's parents came, and this was his mom's first time seeing him race in person, which I think was really beautiful. We got to see them at kind of this pep rally hype kind of thing on stage. They were up there with them, cheering him on, and then we got clips of them watching the race itself. It includes him running into some issues that he ran into with the bike earlier in the week, including a crash while preparing. We actually get to see that on screen. And then it goes pretty deep into this moment that's really pivotal for the whole story, where he decides that there's kind of mixed conditions. No one's really sure how the weather's going to go, and he decides to take the risk and leave his rain tires on and race the entire race with rain tires, even though it hasn't started raining yet, whereas most of the other teams were going with their slick tires. And actually that pivotal decision was what really set him up for such a great race and played a large part in his victory there. It shows a lot of shots of the excited crowd, Zarco signing autographs and meeting with his team. There's even a shot from the top of a Ferris wheel that I thought was really cool, something different that we haven't quite seen. But also those shots of the crowd where he's signing autographs, I got a little bit claustrophobic being in the middle of those people, and it just kind of gave you a sense of what his life is like in terms of just constantly being surrounded by people who love him, adore him, want to be close to him, and you get to see him do the backflip off the bike and all that great stuff too, which is cool. But I'd say the format continues to excel at emotional connection to the subject and making you feel like you're actually there, which is what this immersive video does better than traditional video. And I've seen some docuseries, I'm sure you have, that are very emotional and pull you in. But I think this format actually moves you closer to the subject just by default, because you feel like you're in the room with them and you feel like they're a person that's right there with you. And there's a shot of Zarco eating a plate of sushi. I don't know if you noticed this during the documentary. It's very brief, but I saw that and I was like, I have to have sushi. I feel like I'm sitting in front of a plate of sushi that someone's eating and I can't have it right now. And I actually did go out the next day and eat some, because I could almost smell it just sitting there. That's how drawn in I was by the documentary and the format. And I think it just does such a great job of putting you right there in the middle of everything.
I mean, that's kind of how I felt as well, right? I wasn't cold, but I felt cold because the weather wasn't that great. And I remember being as a youngster, being at Brands Hatch and seeing the cars kind of go by as quick as the bikes in this, because most of what we're seeing are static shots, right? There isn't a lot of movement going on. And I'd say this is shot more like a documentary, like a traditional documentary, but you just getting that added immersion. If there was like smell-o-vision for this, I mean, I'd be smelling petrol, I'd be, I had champagne basically sprayed straight at me, and I actually felt like I'd caught some in my eye when that moment happened. There's a lot going on here, and it's amazing how well it tricks the brain into feeling and smelling things that you shouldn't be, because, again, there's no smell-o-vision. And I think I even got like some goosebumps because I started to feel cold. So I thought it was really, really cool. I also loved the integration that they had. It's very brief, but there's like some archival footage that they are projecting on the underpinning of one of the structures within the track, which I thought was very, very cool. And yeah, from a camera nerd point of view, I loved to see what everyone was shooting on. I saw FX3s, iPhones, Sony FX6 cameras as well, and seeing what lenses they were using. And I'm always kind of panning and looking around to see more what actually the people that are capturing these moments are using, and how everyone's interacting with each other as they're like jostling for position whilst also trying not to get in the way of fans and team members. So yeah, it's fascinating, really fascinating.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I never super realized about the world of sports is how many people are taking your picture and filming you. Like, it's not just this one documentary crew, it's all these different crews that are coming and trying to get the best angles and trying to get the best quality to make the product that they're doing. And yeah, I guess something about seeing it from the camera's perspective, normally you just don't see all the other people around doing the same thing. But because this was immersive and you could look around 180 degrees, you could see so many more people with their cameras and trying to get up to him. And yeah, that was really cool. The last thing I'll say about the technical side of it that I thought was interesting, did you notice the lens flares in a couple of the scenes?
Mm-hmm.
That was something I hadn't noticed before. I think maybe because a lot of what we see with immersive video is in such controlled environments that there isn't a lot of opportunity for like water to get on the lens and things like that. But here it was raining. They were outside. So it was a little bit imperfect isn't even the right word. It was just a little bit more realistic, like you were there, like you had a little bit of water in your eye and were wiping it away. So yeah, that was pretty cool. I'd not seen a lens flare in an immersive video before, and I actually really liked it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked the gritty nature of this. Obviously, we've seen so many like really, really well produced immersive videos in terms of, really being tip top on the coloring and the quick edit and, being really flashy. This is very gritty, very French, and I loved it. In terms of what's coming for immersive video, and I'd say most of this in conjunction with Blackmagic and their Cine Ursa immersive cameras, probably the reason why my pre-order is still kind of floating in the ether somewhere for that camera, because lots and lots has been announced. We've got, beyond the MotoGP Tour de Force documentary that we've just spoken about, a new episode of Elevated set in Maine and hosted by Silo's own Tim Robbins. That's coming on October 3rd. Then we've got Jalimba from Foria in the lush Daintree rainforest of North Tropical Queensland, Australia. Viewers will join a journey with the Eastern Kuku Yailani people, the indigenous traditional custodians of the region, where an elder welcomes them through stories, ceremony, and a profound connection to country. That's going to premiere in October. Then we've got a night at the BBC Proms. I can't tell you how excited I am for this. A performance from pianist Lucas Sternoff playing Edvard Grieg's piano concerto in A minor with the BBC Symphony Orchestra and their chief conductor Sakari Oramo at the world's greatest classical music festival. That's going to premiere this fall, and I can't tell you how excited I am to see that in immersive, and also see the BBC stepping in to immersive in some way. But then we've got another immersive video that was promised, I believe, all the way back at last year's WWDC.
Yeah, we've been hearing about this one for a really long time, and we finally have a rough release date. It's now called World of Red Bull, of course in conjunction with Red Bull. It's an extreme sports series that will debut with backcountry skiing in December and then continue with big wave surfing in 2026. That's the one we've heard about for quite some time, was the surfing. This backcountry skiing, I think this is the first we've heard of it, but we'll get to see it in December. It's cool to see that kick off and to know that This kind of thing has been in the works for so long, these partnerships that Apple has with different companies doing immersive video. We also got CNN in the mix with Journey to Antarctica to find emperor penguins. We're going to go with Chief Climate Correspondent Bill Ware as he joins a scientific expedition to Antarctica. That sounds very cool. Then we've got Experience Paris by the Explorers, an immersive film that celebrates French heritage. And Cortis, Color Outside the Lines from Hebei, going behind the scenes with the new K-pop boy band Cortis. So a wide array of immersive video coming from a wide array of sources, which is not something we've seen before. This is a whole new territory for the format. I'm really excited to see what all these different companies and creators do with immersive video and how it enhances these experiences. So yeah, lots to come, lots to get excited about. And this new, I'm going to call it like a new kind of season of Apple Immersive Video kicks off October 3rd. With a new episode of Elevated, and then it's just going to continue into next year. Very cool.
And I'm hoping plenty of opportunities for people to pop into an Apple store and experience at least brief moments from all of these new original immersive projects. So, yeah, if you've already had your demo, you've got plenty of excuses, hopefully, in the near future to go again and again. But it's now time for us to talk Apple TV news this week. Starting with, I guess not just Apple TV news, but Vision OS news as well, because the first .1 betas are now available to developers and public beta testers for tvOS 26, iOS 26, iPadOS 26, macOS 26 Tahoe, as well as watchOS 26. I've not had a chance to explore this yet. I've just installed the beta, but it's normally a little bit too early for an Apple TV or tvOS surprise. That normally comes a couple of betas in the .1 or .2 release, so we'll have to wait and see. And of course, if we're getting new hardware, there may be some things to unearth deep down within the code. I'm sure someone will find something if there is something to be explored. In terms of app news, though, something we missed last week beyond the Final Cut Camera and Final Cut Pro releases, and that is an update to the Apple Sports app, because of course there would be, wouldn't there, Devon?
Yeah, the Apple Sports app continues to get better and better, and it's not tied to OS releases necessarily, but this just happened to come at the same time as the OS 26 releases. The headlining new feature is widgets, so you can now add customizable sport widgets to your home screen to keep up with live scores and the schedule for your favorite teams and leagues. You can also follow upcoming events to automatically start a live activity when the event begins. That's a very cool capability that's come in these new OSs that I hope third-party developers will take advantage of as well, because the ability to start a live activity based on a schedule, I think there's a lot of cool implications there. Football live activities now feature more details, including timeouts. The app is expanding its soccer coverage with the addition of Bundesliga 2, Liga 2, Primera Liga, Segunda División, and Serie B. And the app is available in more regions, now including Austria, France, Germany, Iceland, Ireland, Italy, Portugal, and Spain. So the Sports app continues on. It's cool to see the widgets especially coming to more and more places. And maybe it'll come to bigger screens at some point on the iPad and the Mac. We'll have to wait and see. But either way, the Sports app carries on. And that brings us to our trailer talk for this week, starting with our very first full trailer for The Last Frontier, a series we've both been looking forward to finding out more about. It follows Frank Remnick, who's the lone U.S. Marshal in charge of the quiet, rugged barrens of Alaska. Remnick's jurisdiction is turned upside down when a prison transport plane crashes in the remote wilderness, setting free dozens of violent inmates. Tasked with protecting the town he's vowed to keep safe, he begins to suspect the crash wasn't an accident, but the first step of a well-crafted plan with far-reaching and devastating implications.
We're the down plane, used to move inmates around the country. They're violent and dangerous.
Whatever it takes to secure the perimeter.
This is Alaska. There is no perimeter. I'm looking for 18 prisoners. The CIA's looking for one. What are you not telling me?
This is only the beginning.
This is created by John Bokenkamp and Richard DeVadio, starring and executive produced by Jason Clarke, and also starring Dominic Cooper, Haley Bennett, Simon Kessel, Dallas Goldtooth, Tate Blum, and Alfred Woodard. I've got to say, just right off the bat, as a fan of 90s action films, I'm over the moon by the trailer. This may be super lazy of me, Devon, but Con Air, except it's a series. Hook this into my veins right away. I cannot wait for us to be talking about this on release week. But yeah, what were your first thoughts looking at this? And don't age me, please.
I wouldn't dare. I would say this sounds like something that has a lot of broad appeal. And I don't mean to age you, Sigmund, but this sounds like a show that I would watch with my dad.
Of course.
Something he would like a lot. A little bit of that woodsiness, a little bit of that criminal procedural kind of thing, like a little bit of Dick Wolf meets the Great Outdoors with the big conspiracy that could be playing out here with what are these inmates doing, who put them here, and what's the real plan. So I like that aspect as well. I think this is something that has potential to draw a lot of people in, and I'm very much looking forward to finding out more about it. The Last Frontier premieres globally on Friday, October 10th on Apple TV+. We also got a new trailer for The Lost Bus, which is currently in select theaters and streaming October 3rd on Apple TV+. That's going to be a highlight on next week's episode, so we're not going to go deep on the trailer now, but they are continuing to promote it and let people know that if you're in an area where it is in theaters, you should go out and check it out before it starts streaming.
Yeah, and a really special screening for public service people within police and fire departments in, I think it was Los Angeles last week, which is very, very cool. I love to see those kind of nods and, you know, Apple going outside of the Hollywood bubble in that regard. So very, very cool indeed. Now for some Apple original news, and we're going to start with some development news, but maybe not really. F1, the movie 2, is it coming? Well, we got a quote from Tim Cook that says, good morning. No, I'm only kidding. Not good morning. But I don't know, but it's definitely something that's being talked about, and it's been such a huge summer blockbuster for us. We're so proud of it. The talent involved are just next level. And Brad did such a wonderful job acting in it. We're super proud of it and can't wait to bring it to the service, which I think is coming pretty soon, because we also got the news last week that the physical release of F1 the movie is coming to 4K Blu-ray along with Steelbook and Blu-ray and DVD. And at least the 4K Blu-ray edition is going to include a digital copy that's going to be redeemable exclusively in the Apple TV app. So this is a first for any Apple original. Very, very cool to see. Physical release in North America is coming October 6th, with, I believe, the same date for most regions other than the UK, with a release coming in November. So, of course, I pre-ordered and I'm getting the US import for the digital copy. Talking of physical releases, Ted Lasso, The Richmond Way. This is the 3-season collection of Ted Lasso that released last year on HD Blu-ray. Well, now it's actually coming to 4K Blu-ray on a bit of a double dip this time on November 11th. All 3 seasons of Ted Lasso are going to be presented this time in 4K Dolby Vision, along with a DTS HD Master Audio 5.1 audio track. And it's a little bit expensive at the moment. I think it's around the $100 mark, whereas the HD Blu-ray went on sale to about $30 and was around the $80 mark at one point. So, you know, maybe wait and see, maybe wait it out, but very, very cool, and it's going to come just in time for a surprise Christmas gift for one of your loved ones. So, if not yourself, you know. In development now, Apple are in talks to finance and produce the next film from acclaimed director Martin Scorsese, What Happens at Night, which is set to star both Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence, is adapted by Patrick Marber from Peter Cameron's novel, and it's a dreamlike story that follows a married American couple who travel to a small, snowy European town to adopt a baby. They check into a cavernous, largely deserted hotel where they encounter an enigmatic cast of characters and learn that nothing is quite as it seems. Now, the team behind the film are eyeing a January start as negotiations continue with Apple. Very, very cool. And a second Martin Scorsese film on Apple, which is very, very cool. Alongside, of course, Mr. Scorsese, the limited documentary series, which is hot on our tails. So, yeah, very, very excited indeed.
I'm just really happy to know that the canned Kool-Aid movie did not turn out to be Mr. Scorsese's final film after all, that he's still working. That's great to know. In casting news, Handmaid's Tales alum Yvonne Strahovski is the latest to join Vince Vaughn in Bad Monkey Season 2. She will play the role of County State Attorney Delaney. This news broke right before we started recording Sigmund. I didn't even know it until I saw it in our document for this episode, and I got so excited seeing this. I've been a fan of hers since way back when she was on Chuck. And of course, I love her on Handmaid's Tale as well, but I'm excited that Yvonne Strahovski is going to be making her way to an Apple original. I think pairing her up with Vince Vaughn is a great idea, and Bad Monkey Season 2 just sounds better and better as we get closer to production. The other big casting news this week is that Justin Theroux from The Leftovers and, of course, The Mosquito Coast has joined the cast of Apple original series Wild Things from creator John Hoffman. Based on the podcast of the same name, the series follows the two greatest showman magicians in history, Siegfried, played by Jude Law, and Roy, played by Andrew Garfield, and, of course, their famous white tigers. Theroux will play Steve Wynn, who signed the duo to a 5-year, $57.5 million deal to perform at his Mirage Hotel, and the series will begin filming this fall. This is a show that we've heard a lot about as it was coming out as a podcast, and then it was being adapted into a series. It seems like they've really got the ball rolling here. I think this trio seems like a great trio to lead the show, and I'm really interested to see what this turns into. I think it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I think like if we're going to cosplay this, of course, I'm Siegfried. Are you Roy, or are you going to be one of the white tigers?
You know, I'll be Roy, but I'm going to require that I have some distance from the animals on set because I just don't trust them.
Let's talk about this week's Apple TV releases. It's a packed week this week, and so packed that along with the MotoGP documentary that was released on Monday, it was very, very difficult for us to pick a specific highlight. So we're going to give just a little extended time to a couple of releases this week that we're looking forward to. Starting today with the Season 5 premiere of Slow Horses, currently sitting at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Everyone's suspicious when resident tech nerd Roddy Ho has a glamorous new girlfriend, when a series of increasingly bizarre events occur across the city, it falls to the Slow Horses to work out how everything is connected. After all, Lamb knows that in the world of espionage, the London rules of cover your back always applies. Devon, we've had an opportunity to check out the first episode, at least a little bit early. What did you think of the premiere episode, and what are the questions you're looking forward to slowly being revealed over the course of this season?
Well, first off, I just want to say that synopsis where it talks about what the London rules are is a sanitized version of how Lamb puts it in the season itself. So just so you know, when they get to it, it's not quite so tame there. To me, this season really has two core mysteries from what I can tell. There's Roddy's new girlfriend, of course, but then there's a horrific attack that seems to be connected to a mayoral election, which also gives the opportunity for the introduction of the mayor of London, played by Nick Mohammed from Ted Lasso, which is an awesome addition. We get a little bit of him in the first episode, but I get a feeling we're going to get more time with him throughout the season. I'm really excited for that. So I think this is a great setup. I look forward to seeing if and how those two mysteries are connected. Usually by the end of the season, Slow Horses has a way of drawing everything together and it all kind of makes sense. But what I really like about this season is that we've been with these people for so long, we're just kind of jumping into the middle of it, right? We don't have to introduce personalities. It's all just right here. It's a cast of characters we know. We're getting in with them. We're just going to jump into the mystery and find out what's going on here with this election and with Roddy's love life. And that'll be really interesting to see. The big question I have, Sigmund, it seems like at the beginning of the season, they're renovating the Slough House office for some reason. Everything's torn up and unpainted and covered in plastic. And so my question is, how many seasons are they going to keep that prop set up to show that Lamb is not putting in the effort to actually get his office fixed? We'll see. But anyway, I thought that was a funny way of changing up the set as well, which was cool.
Oh yeah, that's going to be the work of the prop and set designers for sure over the coming seasons. Today also sees a new episode of The Morning Show where things are about to get very interesting between Corey, Stella, Miles, and soon no doubt Celine. We've got the penultimate episode of Platonic Season 2. And we've got the Apple Music premiere of Apple Music Live, Forza Regada, which I'm looking forward to exploring because I know nothing about this musical act. Again, it's age. It's age. I'm not hip with it like I thought I was. We also have new episodes of Invasion and The Reluctant Traveller on Friday, alongside the debut of a new Apple original film, All of You. This is starring Brett Goldstein and Imogen Poots, and it's a film I had the pleasure of watching at last year's London Film Festival. This is a near-future sci-fi drama romance centered around a new test that matches soulmates together and then comes between two best friends as they spend the next 12 years trying to resist the urge to disrupt the paths their lives have been taken, based on this scientific research that so many have put their trust in and taken as gospel. That's despite the undeniable feeling that they belong together. And as I've probably mentioned a couple of times on the show, as far back as last year, this is very much in the line of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, but with British sensibilities and, of course, the charm of its leading couple. It is funny in moments, but this is definitely one that, personally, it destroyed me when I saw the preview screening at London Film Festival, and I'll be front row for a special Q&A this week with the director and cast, so wish me luck in holding it together and not looking like a complete wreck when it's time for the question and answer session. Thankfully, for the majority of you, you'll be able to either experience this in cinemas and possibly cry publicly, or watch it at home, streaming across all of your screens on Apple TV+. And whether you're a Boston Red Sox fan or a Detroit Tigers fan, one of you is going to be crying at the end of the game that starts at 7:10 p.m. Eastern, because it's the last Friday Night Baseball of the season. But for the sports fans that are looking elsewhere, well, we've got some more sports, because on Saturday it's game day on MLS Season Pass, and on Sunday, of course, Sunday Night Soccer, this time Cincinnati versus Orlando.
For extras this week, we've got one from Slow Horses that features Jackson Lamb sharing words of encouragement. You can only imagine how just soul-destroying that video must be to watch. But anyway, it's there if you want to take it in. Then for Chief of War, we've got The Weapons of Hawaii with Jason Momoa and cast, and inside the episode 109, The Black Desert. But today, we say goodbye not to Chief of War, but to a series that it's really, really hard for me to let go of, Sigmund. A show that we've loved so much over its 4 seasons, and of course I'm talking about Acapulco, which wrapped up last week. We're going to get into our thoughts on the entire series as a whole, so if you haven't finished Season 4 of Acapulco, go ahead and skip to the next chapter. But please do come back once you do, because the series is worth finishing up, and I'm looking forward to talking about it with you right now, Sigmund. In Season 4, present-day Maximo works tirelessly to restore Las Colinas to its former glory before the grand reopening. In 1986, when a competitor claims the #1 spot in the annual ranking of Acapulco's best hotels, young Maximo will do whatever it takes to get back on top and secure Las Colinas' future.
It was 1985, and Las Colinas was the spot.
What's up, Memo? Did you put a window in here? I wanted to give the illusion of light. Don Pablo hired my sister, Dulce, to help with the party.
What if Don Pablo picks her instead of me? I can see through this innocent act of yours.
I suggest you back off.
More twists and turns were still to come. Shall we?
Do I have a choice?
No.
This is created by Austin Winsberg, Eduardo Soneras, and Jason Sherman, inspired by Ken Marino's comedy film How to Be a Latin Lover, and starring Enrique Arizon and executive producer Eugenio Derbez, with an ensemble cast including Fernando Corsa, Rafael Cabran, Vanessa Bush, Camila Perez, Carlos Corona, Cord Overstreet, Regina Reynosa, Jessica Collins, and Regina Orozco. This season featuring guest appearances from Kayla Monteresa Meyer, Omar Chaparro, and Jack McBrayer. Acapulco, Devon, it will always have a very special place in our hearts. The makers of the show actually gave Screen Times our first review quote through James Lee's review of Season 1. And it was the first, if not only truly bilingual comedy to really set our hearts ablaze. A truly exceptional series that was both warm and fun, whilst also not afraid to go to some questionable real places throughout its fourth season, which drew some skepticism from us at one point, I think. But come season 4, we were in the throes of Acapulco's warm embrace once again. And, well, what were we hoping for to see in the season finale?
Well, I've often compared Acapulco to one of my other favorite series of all time, and that is How I Met Your Mother. I think in terms of format, there's a lot of overlap there. And so what I really wanted from the final season was a satisfying conclusion to the mystery, the central question they set up way back in season 1 with Hugo at his uncle's house, listening to these stories. The question that Hugo had, the question that we all have, how did Maximo come to leave Las Colinas and set him on this path to become so wealthy, the way that we meet him in the modern storyline? But what I really hoped to see beyond that, and this is kind of in the wake of season 3 and some of my feelings about the direction that Maximo went in season 3, I wanted to see the story wrap up in a way that didn't require Maximo to completely lose himself, because I just felt like throughout the third season, that's kind of the direction that he went, some of the decisions that he made, and where he ended up. I was afraid that we were going towards like a decline in terms of Maximo's character and the trajectory that he was on, and I was worried about that. That was my big worry at the end of season 3. Thankfully, season 4 took it in a totally different spin, and I think delivered on the things that I was hoping to see anyway. Now, I will say the season featured a lot less build-up to the end than I was expecting, at least in the 80s storyline. I'm not mad about that, though, because it meant we got more classic Acapulco. So rather than this big build-up to Maximo leaving, we got the musical episode. We got just the different antics of Mexico and Memo and figuring out what life's going to look like in their next phase and things like that. I actually loved that we just spent so much more time in just regular Acapulco life rather than this big build up to the end, kind of like we got in the current storyline. That was more of the build up, but in the flashbacks it felt like more of the same, which I actually really, really loved. I did think the ending of the flashback storyline was very real and fitting with the characters that we've come to know. I thought the way that Elder Maximo looked back on his life then and really saw the arc that he was on, I thought that was really telling and wise, where he finally puts his ambitions aside only to realize that it's at the wrong time, and then he becomes so blinded by his own plans that he doesn't see a way forward with Julia. He can't see past his own way that things should be. He has this huge breakthrough in terms of, I'm happy with my life now, I don't need more than this, but then he can't let go of his way of the way that he thinks his life should go, and it ends up costing him quite a bit. And so it's tragic, but I think it is very much fitting with the character and the arc that he's been on. And so it all feels very earned to me and natural, and not like this huge shocking moment at the end. I think we all, it was sad seeing them split up and seeing them go their separate ways, but it wasn't completely out of the blue like, oh, Maximo would never do that kind of thing. And I really did appreciate that.
I really appreciated, over the course of the seasons, we've talked about all of the different relationships and the different forms they take. And there's been a lot of care put into each and every one of them. But there is something really special about this relationship and the depiction of it between Maximo and Julia, because it's across both time periods. My highlight had always been how we saw both the decline of the relationship in one storyline and then the evolution of the relationship, and the two of them then reconnecting in the other. And I thought that was very, very cool. And I get what you mean when, we're talking about How I Met Your Mother. And in that regard, I think that worked really well here for that format. I'll get to it a little bit later in the conversation, but I also love the fact that, this is a show that embraces mistakes as well as aspiration. And that's not necessarily just, adjacent to your professional life, right? But to the relationships and to the people you meet and how you treat them. And actually, sometimes it reflects how you treat yourself. So I don't think they necessarily spell it out, but it's a feeling that I got across all 4 seasons from that first interaction between Maximo and Chad. And I think that's prevailed across both timelines throughout the show. And I think that's probably the strongest element to me. And it showed, especially at the end of season 4.
Absolutely. There's a hope that's embedded in the DNA of this show. Hope for the future, hope that you can get the dream job and continue to grow, but also hope that when you stumble, that you're going to be able to get back up again and carry on, and that you can still have that life that you dreamed of. One of my mantras that I repeat to myself often is nothing is wasted. And a lot of times that comes into play with things that happen to us, like the bad things that happen to us. We can learn from them, grow from them, and use them. But also, our mistakes as well. Nothing is wasted. Those are learning opportunities. Those are opportunities to go down paths we never would have gone down if we had lived the perfect life that we dreamed of, right? And we see Maximo, as the current storyline becomes less about reflecting and more about the decisions that he's making and how he's going to carry forward. We see him learn those lessons, that this trip down memory lane with Hugo is not just him reminiscing, but it's him learning and him choosing to do differently in the future. And the fact that, he made those mistakes years and years ago doesn't mean that he can't do better now and still have some semblance of his dreams come true. And that's actually another of the themes of How I Met Your Mother that really resounds with me, as well as the long-term story of like how things work out in the end, not the way you expect, but they do end up working out in the end. But as that current timeline became more and more prominent, I think it became more important that was the happy ending of the series, because we knew that the 80s timeline was not going to be, that there was going to be some kind of break there. But in the current timeline, we get to see Maximo finally get a second chance to do things the right way, both with the hotel and with Julia, and move beyond living in the past to start creating some new stories. I thought that was just a beautiful ending, and the way they tied it all together was just awesome.
I also want to say I was very happy to see Hugo return for the finale, because his presence was missed throughout the last season as the, inciting factor for the stories. I guess the question would be, why didn't present day Sarah also make an appearance?
Yeah, I have to imagine that Hugo and Sarah being missing from the current storyline in the last season had to just be logistics of, casting. And the current storyline grew so much, the number of people who came in towards the end really just expanded so much. So could have been scheduling, could have just been priorities in terms of the number of people they wanted to bring in. But yeah, I'm glad that Hugo came in. I would have loved to have seen Sarah make an appearance at that last banquet table, but maybe she wasn't just available. I'd say she got a great ending in the 80s storyline. It would have just been kind of just cool to just see her touch base towards the end, because we did see her in season 1 interacting with Hugo. Anyway, that's like one of those tiny nitpicks, I would say, on an otherwise just impeccable finale. And it's one of those things, I guess you can just imagine where Sarah's at, or maybe she could be one of those potential spinoffs.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is the thing, right? We could have a Sarah spinoff, or we could have the story of Hugo. There's always a future of spin-offs, according to the co-creator Austin Winsberg. But for now, how will we remember Acapulco? I think I already touched on it, but I'll just repeat myself in saying that I think what I'm going to take from this, beyond, let me just say, the talented people behind the scenes, the set design, the music, the choreography, just the general emotion and feeling that I got from this because of the teams involved and the incredible writing as well, and how accessible this was for a bilingual story. What I will say is I thought it was really encouraging in its messaging about aspiration and chasing your dreams. It's, of course, an underdog story, but not just of Maximo in his younger days, but also when we revisit him in his later days, kind of, full of regret. And it tells us that it's never too late to aspire for something great. And it's also never too late to start over and start making amends. I think we do get very tied into our emotions in terms of if someone hurts us. A lot of people will just cut the cord and that's it. Whereas maybe it just takes a little bit of time and you can reconnect. And that was one of the biggest things that I took from this. And I did start reconnecting with people come season 3, funnily enough. So that inspired me. And so that's going to have a lasting effect on me with my personal relationships with people and family. What would you say is the lasting effect of this series on you, either personally or in general?
I think the feeling it's always going to leave me with is warmth. And, in terms of not only being in Acapulco and the beautiful sun and all of that paradise aspect of it, but just the warmth of the series, the heart that it has, the approach that it has to life. I think there's so much about it that I personally have learned from and want to carry forward with me. There's, of course, the joy and the optimism of being young that I think we all would do well to try to recapture at least a little bit. And young Maximo, just the way he goes in wide-eyed and believes in himself and believes in the good of the world, that he can make an impact. All of that, I think, is just something that I enjoy being reminded of and seeing on screen. But also the impact of remembering and a reminder that you can both appreciate the good old days and learn from them to help you create even better days ahead. And I think you put it really well when you said it's never too late, and I think we can convince ourselves that there's no coming back from something that we did to somebody, or that, it's just that the relationship can never be the same, or that there's not meaningful connection to be had in the future. And as you said, and as I think we've all probably learned from our lives, but could use a reminder, it's just not true. The human spirit is strong. Our ability to love one another and connect with one another is so strong. And I think seeing that on screen was just such a great reminder and encouragement to me. And I want to live that way. And that's what Acapulco leaves me with. Of course, you can stream the entire run of Acapulco now on Apple TV+. I've already got it on my list of things to rewatch. I think it might become one of those shows that I can keep on in the background just as like a vibe, and not necessarily have to be something that I'm paying total attention to, but I also do think it's got some great rewatchability as well. And of course, if you haven't seen Acapulco, we highly encourage you check it out because it's just such a special series and one that I'm really grateful I'll have the opportunity to revisit as it continues to live on Apple TV+. Before we wrap up for the week, Sigmund, we always have our watch list, things that people should be checking out in the TV app beyond Apple Originals. What have you got for us this week?
Devon, we've got lots this week, and you know what? For once, it's not just movies. There's TV, there's game shows, there's all sorts here this week. So a real packed week. And we're going to go back and forth between movies and TV shows this week. Now available is Tulsa King Season 3, the Season 3 premiere on Paramount+. This is more silly gangster shenanigans from Sylvester Stallone and crew. It shouldn't be a good show, but for some reason it keeps drawing me back, and this is definitely a guilty pleasure of mine. A lot of fun. It makes almost no sense whatsoever when you try and look at some of the predicaments from a logical point of view. But yeah, it's just good fun. Then we've got the return of The Floor, Season 2, the game show on Fox. One of your favourites, Devon. For those that aren't familiar with it, what's the basis of this?
It's a very approachable trivia show. You've got 100 people on a 10x10 grid on a floor, and one of them gets selected, and then they get to challenge someone else in their category next to them for their territory in a trivia challenge. And very easy to participate in. It's not like highbrow trivia that no one's going to know. The categories are very fun and approachable, and it's really fun to strategize and see the way that people try to either take territory or hide on the floor. And it's hosted by Rob Lowe, who just brings the charm and has so much fun. So it's a great show.
Very cool. So that's one of your favourites. The other favourite that's returning this week is The Golden Bachelor, which will be the first time that I'm watching this from the get-go. I'm sad that Danny DeVito isn't involved, but I'm looking forward to this. And then, from a feature film perspective, again, something else for Devon, and that's Fantastic Four First Steps, which is making its way to PVOD, possibly also a 3D Apple Vision Pro title. We don't know that for sure just yet, but keep an eye out. Then on Disney Plus, we've got Sneaker Wars, Adidas versus Puma. And this is a documentary series with exclusive access to both companies, with the series telling the parallel stories of Adidas and Puma via the warring brothers Adi and Rudy Dassler, who built the two businesses, and their changing commercial fortunes, and various athletes and influencers are also involved in this. Looks fascinating. On Thursday, we have English Teacher Season 2 on Disney Plus and Hulu. And I'm so happy about this because this just crept up on me. This is another series that I expected to have like a year break before the next season, but here we are. And it's about an English teacher in Austin, Texas, who often finds himself at the intersection of the personal, professional and political aspects of working at a high school. Season 1 was a previous Up Next pick and was very funny, warm, brilliantly written, starring Brian Jordan Alvarez alongside an ensemble cast featuring the incredibly talented Stephanie Koenig, with each episode bookended by 80s hits. Sounds like a familiar Acapulco recipe? Yes, and it works just as well. Next up is Splitsville. This is a movie coming to us by way of Neon on Friday, and is starring and directed by Michael Angelo Covino alongside Dakota Johnson and others. This is really interesting. It follows Ashley, who asks for a divorce and is then watching as the good-natured Corey runs to his friends Julie and Paul for support. But he's shocked to discover that the secret to their happiness is an open marriage. That is, until Corey crosses the line and throws all of their relationships into chaos. The trailer looks hilarious. This isn't going to be for everyone, but right on the top of my list. Anything Dakota Johnson's in, I'm going to have to give a shot. So yeah, that's Splitsville, coming to PVOD on Friday. So that's the watch list. Quite varied. I think we've catered for all audiences this week. But we're missing both some animation and some zombie lore. So, Devon, what is your up next pick this week?
Well, I'm going to bring both, Sigmund, courtesy of Marvel Zombies. This is an animated series on Disney Plus. It's got 4 parts. It's actually a spin-off of a particular episode of the animated series What If, that was set in a world where the Avengers become zombies, and I guess it was so successful that they ended up making it its own series. So it's set in a world where the Avengers are infected by a zombie virus, and in order to save the world from the zombie Avengers, there's kind of the B team of Marvel comes in, and they're trying to stop the zombie Avengers. And so you got, of course, Captain America. Thanos is a zombie in this. I think Moon Knight is actually one of the heroes who's fighting the zombies. So it's kind of an opportunity to bring in some more characters, and it just continues what I love about the What If series, which is just like there's no stakes, right? It's not part of any continuity. It's just, let's just tell a cool story using these characters. And I love that, and I'm excited to see what they do with it. So all 4 parts are now streaming on Disney Plus. If you're into that kind of thing, check out Marvel Zombies.
Very cool. Professor X zombie or not?
Ooh, I don't know. I don't know that the X-Men have actually appeared in the What If series, so this would be a great way to bring them in. They're being very careful, Marvel is, with the X-Men in terms of how they're incorporating them into the MCU. So I don't know, but that would be really interesting. I would not want to fight a zombie Professor X. I just feel like that would go very poorly. So that's what I've got for us this week, Sigmund, for the fans of Marvel and zombies. But what about you? What have you got?
I have something that I wasn't expecting to ever recommend on this show, and that is Caught Stealing. It's coming to PVOD next Tuesday. It's directed by Darren Aronofsky and stars Austin Butler, Matt Smith, Zoe Kravitz, Regina King, Vincent D'Onofrio, and Bad Bunny. And this is a huge surprise for me. I've always been a fan of Darren Aronofsky's work. I think Black Swan and The Wrestler in particular. But rarely have I found his character studies enjoyable. Instead, I kind of treat them as challenging and artistic character studies, not popcorn popping, theatre pleasing movies, right? Caught Stealing is actually a huge detour for Darren Aronofsky, and it follows Austin Butler as Hank Thompson, a burnt-out former baseball player who is unwittingly plunged into a wild fight for survival in the downtown criminal underworld of 90s New York City. And this is somewhat of a nostalgia trip with a raucous punk rock soundtrack. It features skinheads, drug cartels, the Yiddish mafia, and corrupt cops, alongside a punk rocker's cat that everyone has to take care of. And the sound mix to this is so aggressive to the point that I think it actually rivals the likes of Mad Max, Furiosa, and Fury Road. This is actually way up there on my personal list of the year after seeing this in theatres. And this is a surprise callback to great action movies, which I'm hoping will continue with Apple Original Series The Last Frontier in just a couple of weeks' time. So this is definitely getting me in the mood, but it's from Darren Aronofsky. And again, it's a huge, huge surprise. So I'm looking forward to watching this again at home. I'm hoping the soundtrack lives up to what I experienced in a small theatre at my local theatre. But yeah, really, really cool. Do not sleep on this. I think it's going to be a surprise in many top lists come the end of the year. Caught Stealing on PVOD next Tuesday.
Awesome. Great pick, Sigmund. And with that, that's all from us for this week. Of course, thanks so much to everyone for listening. We really appreciate it. And we love to hear what you're thinking. So if you have any feedback for anything we discussed on the show or anything that you're watching, you can contact us on social media via the links in the show notes, or you can reach out via our contact form, which we'll also link in the show notes.
Well, Devon, you're taking a week off next week, which means I'll be back next week with a special guest to dive into The Savant and The Lost Bus, as well as the week in the world of Apple TV. So until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade, and have a great week.